And as an itinerant, I actually get to share the Lord's table with a lot of different congregations. It's kind of interesting, but it's a neat privilege. And every once in a while, I get to do it more than once a month, because this church did it that week, and this church did it next week, and oh well. But no, it's a privilege to share that important time with you this evening. And it's also a privilege to be able to, again this evening, talk to you about Shepherd's Ministries, and then to present a message from God's Word with you as well. Just before I dive into what I've planned, just a couple sort of extra things. First of all, you probably noticed that there's literature on the table out there, and I think this is probably really significant to you to know that you still have an opportunity to receive your very own copy of the 2017 calendar from Shepherd's Ministries. We have a few left. Now, the question is, why in the world would anybody want a 2017 calendar? Well, what do you mean? It's only the 3rd of December. You got the whole rest of the month. Yeah, so, but really the best part of this calendar is you don't really need to worry about the dates or the order, but you see there's pictures of the people we serve. And I think that's what kind of helps make, or it brings shepherds to life when you see the people we serve. And tonight we'll see a little bit more of that. The second thing I wanted to comment on is, I'm wondering how many of you remember years past. I've been representing shepherds a little over 7 years now, and before me was Ralph Polson, Ralph and Margie Polson. How many of you remember them? Okay, quite a few of you. Just wanted to make sure you're up to date on them. You may remember that Ralph and Margie had a daughter that was at Shepherd's for 40-some years. Finally, her health care needs got to the point where Shepherd's just couldn't really care for her any longer. We probably cared for her longer than we should. But anyway, she finally needed to go to a nursing home, and Wisconsin wouldn't pay for it, but of all things, the state of Washington would. And so she made the move out and was in a nursing home there just 12 miles from Ralph and Margie up in Ferndale, Washington. She moved, I believe it was in January, and then she passed away in July. But they had those final months with her. And then the more recent update on Ralph and Margie Polson is that Margie went home to be with the Lord, I think it was in October, just a few weeks back. So if you'd not heard that, if you remember them, I just wanted you to be aware of that. I had the privilege. I had a weekend that wasn't scheduled elsewhere, and so I had the opportunity to go up to Ferndale and be present for her memorial service. And that was it's a triumphant thing when a saint goes home, isn't it? And she was a wonderful servant of the Lord for many years as a missionary in Brazil and pastor's wife in Ferndale, Washington, and then traveling with her husband Ralph for Shepherds, I think about 10 years. So anyway, a couple things there. Let me talk to you a little bit more about Shepherd's Ministries then. Let me pick up the thread that I suggested to you this morning. Remember I told you that people get saved through Shepherd's College? And that's a pretty good thing. That's a wonderful thing. So I told you a little bit about Keith this morning. You remember that? Remember, Keith was a young man from Victorville, California. He has dwarfism. He's developmentally disabled. He came. He was resistant to the Lord, to the gospel, to the Word of God. But over time, God changed him. God saved him. Well, in that first year, I may have suggested that he had some conflicts with another student. It was interesting. I was telling this second story for tonight at the church there in Victorville, and Keith's mom says, "Oh, that's James you're talking about." And Keith and James got into so many arguments and fights that they both just about got kicked out. Well, let me tell you about James. James is a young man from New Hampshire. James came with a bit of a reputation. He was a bit of a hothead. He'd actually gotten put out of another community college program. And I remember thinking to myself when I heard this story, well, why did we accept him? But our staff believed in taking a risk on James. James came in and he was a challenge, and he was in conflict with Keith and other issues. But the staff stayed with him. They kept working with him. And I believe it was in about November of that first semester, so this is 3 years back, James got saved. And it was a rather quick turnaround in his outlook and his behavior, his attitude. Pretty remarkable event. And, discipleship for most of us takes a long time. And I'm not saying that James has arrived, but anyway, a lot of good things happen quickly. So much so that when he got home for Christmas, his mom was astounded and thrilled and thankful. And I guess it is that maybe James and some of these folks, they don't travel independently. And so Mom traveled back to Shepherd's with James for January, to start the next term. And so she was so thrilled about his change and school and everything. So she went into the office and said, they have this disabilities fair there in New Hampshire, and you guys really ought to be there representing the school. And so why aren't you coming? And the answer is, we can't afford to go to all those places. He says, well, I'll pay for it. Well, that means we'd have to fly. So I'll pay for it. So our representative flew out, and she paid for the display space, but that's not all. She showed up. So if you can imagine that there's this display area and all these disability programs are there, and secular and a few religious, and so anyway, Shepherd's has a table here, and our representative is there, Brian's there, and Mom's there, and there's other booths around. And so Mom is in the process of telling this other mother how wonderful Shepherd's College is and how wonderful it's been for her son. And besides that, the state of New Hampshire is paying $20,000 a year to help toward his tuition. Well, the lady over here, representing a community college program right in the state of New Hampshire, she heard that story. And she said, no, wait a minute. She interrupted and said, that's not right, because students at our school don't get, they don't get tuition help. They don't get support like that. This just isn't right. That school's way out of the state. I think it's kind of fun what the Lord does sometimes. So about that time, a lady from the Department of Education came walking into the scene. And she said, hey, I hate to interrupt, but I remember this story. I actually was a part of that decision. And the reason that James is getting annual support at $20,000 to go to Shepherd's College in Wisconsin is because they're accredited. And your school isn't. So the accreditation piece makes a lot of difference. And not all states provide portable benefits, but then again, a number do. So just to review the story about James, what's the best part of that story? Okay. James got saved. And the accreditation and scholarship stuff is pretty cool too, isn't it? Yeah. Let me have you look at another short video clip about Shepherd's College. This morning's probably tugged at your heart a little bit. This is a little bit more direct, maybe more directed toward parents wondering about what it's all like there. And so this is a bit of a video tour of Shepherd's College.
Hi, and welcome to Shepherd's College. Shepherd's College is a 3-year post-secondary school that exists to educate and train students with intellectual or developmental disabilities by equipping them in vocational, social, and life skills while inspiring a lasting awareness of God's plan for their lives. This is the Finley Center. It's the first building on campus, and it's where our business, human resources, marketing, and foundation offices are located. On the second floor, we have 4 hotel-style suites available for families and guests who visit our campus free of charge. Suites are reserved on a first-come, first-served basis. It's going to help them save at least probably $100 to $300 depending on how long their stay is. So it's a really nice thing to be able to offer. Along with our technology, horticulture, and culinary arts labs, Shepherd's College has a variety of classrooms. Teachers use the real teaching and learning strategy that helps students learn relationally and experientially in their preferred learning style. They can see how the information being taught can be applied to their life now and after Shepherd's College. Shepherd's College Greenhouse and Horticulture Lab provides students with hands-on and classroom experience. The greenhouse opens seasonally to the public, providing students with opportunities to design custom-made planters, as well as develop their customer service and money skills. Shepherd's College Culinary Arts Lab and Commercial Kitchen gives students hands-on and classroom experience as they pursue careers in culinary arts.
I absolutely love culinary a lot.
And then the top mixture was a crumble, which has like cinnamon sugar, brown sugar, flour, glass butter, and interesting stuff. It looks really good.
In the lab, students focus on specific skill development, while the commercial kitchen provides them with marketable industry experience. Shepherd's College Technology Program offers students hands-on and classroom experience as they pursue careers in technology. Topics of training include professional office skills, programming, coding, networking, repairs, and mass media.
I love computers, learning how to build and troubleshoot.
The dorms are the most structured and supported residential environments on campus, allowing first-year students to transition successfully from home to college. The first phase of the residential progression at Shepherd's College is in the Wood Center. We provide housing for our female students in the north dorms and separate male student dorms to the south. In each wing, students share dorm-style rooms, a common kitchen, dining area, laundry room, and a community living space. The second phase in the residential progression at Shepherd's College is Homes A and B. Home A provides housing for 8 women and Home B for 8 men. The homes provide the opportunity for increased independence as students are responsible to prepare meals, do their own laundry, and care for their rooms and common living areas. The Clark Apartments are the third and final phase of the residential progression at Shepherd's College. These 2-person apartments give students a greater sense of independence as they prepare for life after graduation. In the Clark Apartments, students have a weekly grocery budget, plan and prepare their own meals, and shop for their own groceries.
Can we show you your apartment?
Yeah. The tour? Thank you. Additionally, students share responsibility in cleaning, laundry, and general apartment upkeep.
Like Friday, I think it's your turn to come. Yeah.
So here's our Student Media Center. Provides some desktop computers or some iPads and a variety of other kind of resources that students can check out or use as they need to for projects or for leisure, recreation in the afternoons and evenings. Our dedicated advisors love their students and play a pivotal role in their journey towards appropriate independence. Advisors are also the primary point of contact for parents, and they communicate about how a student is doing throughout the course of the year because we find it's really important that we work as a team, both with the families and the individual, towards student success. Home to the Soaring Eagles, the Bolthouse Center is where the action is, including Special Olympics, chapel, graduation, and other special events. Appropriate Independence Academy, or what we call AI Academy, is a program for students who don't quite meet the academic criteria to be in the occupational programs at Shepherd's College. So we provide a unique program for them that focuses primarily on daily living skills, social skills, money skills, and then they get the Bible education portion as well. They stay in the dorms, the residential setting, just like all the other students. Monday through Friday, Shepherd's Table is the place to be for lunch. Food is prepared in Shepherd's Kitchen, right here on campus, where culinary students have an opportunity to learn and serve. We are fully recognized as a post-secondary program by the U.S. Department of Education. The accreditation opens up funding sources for students in the form of federal student aid, such as the Pell Grant, Student and Parent Plus loans, and federal work-study. It also enables some students to receive additional funds through third-party scholarships, as well as vocational rehabilitation funding from certain states. If you'd like to know more, we invite you to join us in person. As always, please feel free to call or email us if we can help you further explore the possibility of attending Shepherd's College.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and hopefully you understand even more about Shepherd's College, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have about it after we're done this evening. And then it would be great if you know a family that might be served by Shepherd's College, spread the word. Take some of the literature, pass it on. We would love to have you help us in spreading the word in that way. This last October, Susan and I had the opportunity to go back to Shepherd's for some meetings. I usually go back twice a year, and it had been a long time since Susan went back with me, but she had recently retired from her work at Boise State University, and so she could go. And so along with a bunch of long meetings, like, that's staff meetings, they get boring. But anyway, you got to do it. But we also had a couple hours where we could break away and go to some classes at Shepherd's College. So we got in on a horticulture class and a technology class. So this indicates what you see here is our horticulture lead instructor, Owen Lackey. Owen didn't start the program, but he picked it up here a couple years ago. And he is just a great teacher. And he's just a great in interacting with the students. And here in this day, they were outside, that you can see in the background there, the greenhouse and the shade thing there. And anyway, this day he was out actually in the grounds at Shepherd's training and demonstrating how to do pruning. And so here he's giving some instruction. And then I think if you go to the next picture, you'll see he's actually maybe showing. Do I have a clicker up here? So let me see. Yeah, maybe so. So you can see he's actually trying to show them how to do some of this. And it was just really fun to watch the interaction with Owen and the students and their response. So as they would go from tree to tree or shrub to shrub, he'd say, now, what kind is this? And what did we learn about that? And what are the features of this? And it was remarkable what these students had retained and were remembering. Let me just tell you one other thing about this as we go back to that first picture. Owen Lackey, he's the director of the horticulture program at Shepherd's College. So what prepared him for that? Well, I could tell you about the 30 years he's worked at Shepherd's Ministries. And about 30 or 32 years maybe it is now. But he went there because he loved the mission of the ministry. He has worked for 30 years or whatever. He's been, in charge of maintenance and landscaping and building and remodeling. And he's the on-site guy to manage all of that stuff. He's also occasionally substituted in the horticulture program. And then when the teacher abruptly had to leave to take care of some family needs, he stepped in as a substitute. And then they said, well, Owen, it was going so well. They said, well, Owen, would you like to apply for the job? Yeah, I think so. Well, then they come to realize, wait a minute, this guy has a degree in horticulture from Cornell University? Is he capable of this? Yeah, probably. And in addition to that, he has a Bible degree from Faith Baptist Bible College. Yeah, I think he's the right guy for the job, don't you? Yeah. Anyway, Owen is a great guy. And then we got in on the technology class, one particular session, and John Andrus, the director of that program, he's the one that really devised the program and is the lead instructor in that program. Just a brilliant guy. One of the things that prepared him for his role is that he's worked at Shepherd's College, I think nearly from the beginning, and he was one of the residence life faculty. That means he, part of the time, lives in the residence unit and is on-site trainer because it's not just academic classes, but it's life skill classes that you live in the living environment. So he was well familiar with the students and the whole process at Shepherd's College. And anyway, he's doing a great job in that. Tora is an interesting story. He's actually a graduate of Shepherd's College, but came back and took instruction in the technology area and is now a teaching assistant employed by Shepherd's College. And this is one of the current students, and I'm sorry I can't remember his name, but he was showing me some of the photographic equipment that they use in their the photo track of things. And he's also moving that design to the computer screen. How do you do that? I don't know how you do that, but anyway, he's drawing it in the computer. And this young man is nonverbal. So part of his mix of disabilities includes that issue. And so he communicates really on his iPad. He hears fine, understands fine, but to communicate back with his teacher or with us, that's the way he handles it. And then a couple other students in the technology class. Well, I think that's all that I'll try to show you tonight, because I realize now I only have 15 minutes for a sermon. Has he done a 15-minute sermon lately?
Yes, I did. I told you about it in Togo.
Congratulations. All right. If you take your Bibles and turn to Job chapter 1. Job chapter 1. I think I mentioned to you this morning that as I travel from place to place, I have the opportunity to present, several different messages that I enjoy presenting, and they all have something to do, and my objective is that they all have something to do with a connection with the work and philosophy of ministry at Shepherd's, but also have a connection with your life as well. And I hope there'll be a lesson in that respect, or at least one, maybe more tonight for you. So let's begin in Job chapter 1. If you want a title for this fascinating message, it would be The Acts of a Upright Man. Verse 1 of Job 1. In the land of Uz there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. I'm going to stop there for the moment. So who said that about Job? That he was a blameless and upright man? Who said that? Whose assessment is that? Yeah, that's God's assessment, isn't it? That's pretty good. We were this evening encouraged to examine our own hearts. Amen. And that's a scary thing. But more significant is the fact that God has already examined our hearts and constantly does. And of all things, when the Lord was pointing out Job as an example of a righteous man, God said, yeah, my servant Job there, he's blameless and upright. Isn't that remarkable? Can God say that about you? Me? It's a convicting thought, isn't it? But of all things, God did say that about Job. And then it goes on in the last part of verse 1 again. Let me read it again. Sort of defining what it means to be blameless and upright. It tells us that he feared God. I think that means that he honored God. He respected God. I like to use the concept of he deferred to God and his authority. When he was aware of what God wanted or didn't want, Job submitted to that. He deferred to that. He accepted that. He followed that. He obeyed that. He feared God and he shunned evil. He turned away from evil. I think there are two ways to look at the idea that he shunned evil. One is that he was doing evil and he turned away from it. But I don't think that's what it means. I think rather it means that when he was aware of what was evil, he said, no, I'm not going there. It's not that he turned away or he stopped doing evil, but I think it means that he avoided doing that evil. By the way, I often preach in churches that use the King James Bible, and the word there is eschewed evil. And I was commenting to my wife the other day as I was reviewing, I was saying, whoever uses the word eschewed? And then of all things, as we were driving over last night, we were listening to the Boise State game, and the announcer said they eschewed a certain play. He thought that they were going to do one thing, and they eschewed that and did something else. Couldn't believe it. I guess people actually do use that word. Where have I been? Oh, well. Now, the point I'd like to make, though, is that to be blameless and upright, I think, has two sides to it. It has the side which means I avoid doing wrong things. That's maybe especially in focus here. But I believe there's another side of being a blameless and upright man or person, and that is that I consciously and intentionally pursue the right things. So part of being blameless and upright is to avoid the evil, but it's also to pursue the righteous. And I think we see a suggestion of that right here in this immediate context. If you look down beginning in verse 4, he had all these sons and daughters, and they would have birthday parties, and he was a little bit concerned about just how they were how they were living during those things. And verse 5, when the period of fast or feasting had run its course, Job would send and have them purified. Early in the morning, he would offer a sacrifice of burnt offering for each of them, thinking, perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. And this was Job's regular custom. He was looking out for his kids. He was the family priest. He was the family. He was the spiritual leader of his family. It's a great picture there, isn't it? I think that's part of his positive, intentional righteousness. But let me show you another illustration of that. If you turn over to Job chapter 29. Now, we're obviously skipping over a whole lot of important revelation here in this story of Job. We're skipping over the early chapters where he lost everything, all of his wealth, all of his possessions. He lost his family, all but his wife. He lost his health. It was so bad that even his wife said, well, why don't you just curse God and die? Let's get it over with. And then his friends showed up. Remember that? Some friends. So he had his counselors, his friends. They showed up. And they were not a whole lot of encouragement to him, were they? They had a dominant theological outlook that they repeatedly communicated to him, and that was, as if you're suffering, that means you're sinning, because that's just the way it works. And I think basically Job is saying, I hear you, but I don't see where I'm guilty. I just don't see it. And as we come here to chapter 29, I think what Job is doing is he's reflecting back on the good old days, and he's giving his defense, giving his testimony, the testimony of the good days when things were great. Now, I don't have time this evening to take you into chapter 30 and 31, where he accounts and acknowledges and responds to the suffering. But here he's seeing, we see his own personal testimony, I think, of his intentional righteous acts, which I think were part of the picture for which God gave him credit, for which God said, here is a blameless and upright man. I think this is part of the picture, and I think in these things, Job is a great example to us. I want to begin in Job 29 and verse 7. I guess I should just make one other comment. I think that Job, in fact, is the end of the chapter, it identifies him in verse 25. I dwelt as a king among his troops. He was the chief man in his town. He was the great leader. He was the honored man. Sometimes as I look at these verses, I think that he fulfilled the functions of being the mayor, the city magistrate, and the chief of police. He kind of wore those hats, and was highly respected in the community in the good old days before things started to fall apart. Verse 7, when I went to the gate of the city and took my seat in the public square, the young men saw me and stepped aside, and the old men rose to their feet. You see what's going on? So he was such a respected man that the young men, they weren't going to cross the great man. They weren't going to get caught. And so they would just get out of sight. But even the chief men of the city, the elders of the city, well, they would rise in respect of Job. Verse 9, the chief men refrained from speaking, and they covered their mouths with their hands. The voices of the nobles were hushed, and their tongues stuck to the roof of their mouths. Do you understand what that means? You think that means that they had to go to an oral surgeon and get it loosened? No, I don't think it's the point. But it's tough to talk. Tough to talk with your tongue stuck to the roof of your mouth. I think the point is they were quiet. They were quiet in his presence because Job has entered the scene. Job has entered the city square. And so they're going to give respect, and they're going to be quiet, and they're going to wait for him to speak. It's the kind of character, that's the kind of reputation that he had in the community there. So now we're at verse 11. Whoever heard me spoke well of me, and those who saw me commended me. So again, this great reputation, and now we begin to see the answer to the question, why? Why was he so respected? Why were people quiet around him? Why did people listen to what he said? Verse 12, because I rescued the poor who cried for help. He was sensitive to poor, dependent people. And he didn't just see them and feel sorry for them. He did something to deliver them, to rescue them. The middle of verse 13. The middle of verse 12. And the fatherless who had none to assist him. Also, he delivered the fathers, the orphan. That again, the needy person got his attention and his assistance. Now verse 13. The man who was dying blessed me. Why would that be? Because probably that dying man was destitute, that dying man was lonely. And I picture the idea that though he was the great man in the community, he paid attention to the lonely. And he provided the support that was needed by this dying person. He's not going to let somebody die alone. And now the middle part of verse 13, I made the widow's heart to sing. And again, why would that happen? The sing must be a contrast with the cry. Why was she crying? Well, she's crying probably because she's destitute. And so I don't know the details, but I take it that Job paid her rent. Job sent people with groceries. Job provided for her. And it made her heart to sing. Because he was her deliverer, her rescuer. Verse 14. I put on righteousness as my clothing, and justice was my robe and my turban. I think that's maybe a little bit difficult to understand, to piece together, but I kind of look at it this way. I thought very briefly about wearing my tie tonight, and then I thought, oh well, even if Randy wears a tie, if Pastor Cook wears a tie, it's okay. I'm going to just be me, okay? Didn't apparently have to worry, did I? I'm so refreshed. But we all have kind of cultural expectations. And, at least on a Sunday morning, you kind of think that the guy with the coat and tie and so on, well, in fact, this often happens to me. I may be the only guy in the church when I show up for Shepherds. I'm the only guy in the church with a coat and tie on. And plus I have a microphone on. And so people say, oh, are you preaching today? Yeah, how'd you guess? Well, it's because I'm wearing the garb. I'm wearing the symbols of the activity. I look like a preacher, so yeah, I'm going to preach now. You get me? And I think what we're saying here, what Job's testimony is that he functioned as the city community judge, but he didn't really have to wear the robe and wear the turban that was symbolic of the role of the judge. But rather, he was known as the guy who was righteous and just. So his character communicated his position. He didn't have to wear the physical garb. I think that's a great testimony. What do people think of when they see us? Wouldn't it be neat if they looked at us and thought of a righteous, blameless, upright woman or man? That's just what we're known for. We don't have to dress different. It's because we live different. It's because we respond differently, righteously. And then just a couple other thoughts. Verse 13. I was eyes to the blind. That's pretty simple, isn't it? I was feet to the lame. I was a father to the needy. Again, that's provision for the poor, the needy, the dependent. I took up the cause of the stranger. I broke the fangs of the wicked and snatched the victims from their teeth. Let me just talk to you for a minute about the idea. I took up the cause of the stranger. Remember, I suggested that he's the city judge, and I kind of picture a story where one townsman brings in another and makes an accusation. Maybe we're going to use Pastor Virgil here for an illustration. Okay. Oh, actually, this will be fun. So we'll use Pastor Virgil and Pastor Dave, okay? There he is back there. So Pastor Virgil comes in and drags this foreigner in and says, "He stole my lamb." And Job says, "Oh, really?" He's sitting in the judgment place in the city center there. And he says, "Oh, really? Well, tell me about it." "Well, yeah, so Virgil tells the story. And so Job says, "Well, let me think this one through. I want to do a little investigation before I pass judgment on this situation. We'll talk about this next week." And so meanwhile, Job goes out and interviews people, checks out the case, and discovers that Pastor Dave has been he's a foreigner. I think that's part of what's not stated but implied here. He's a foreigner, but he has a good reputation. Nobody else has had any problem with him. And then he also finds out that Virgil didn't even have a lamb. And furthermore, he heard that, he's made a false accusation like this once before. I'm probably really in trouble now, aren't I? It's a good thing we go a long ways back, huh? And so now it's back to court, okay? And so Job is ready, and he's ready to pass judgment, and he says, "Absolutely, you're a liar, and David he's innocent, and furthermore, if you ever try this again, you're going to get put in the clink." I think maybe that's kind of the idea there in verse 17. I broke the fangs of the wicked and snatched the victims from their teeth. Job's going to set things right. Now, part of what we've seen in these verses tonight is that Job has taken initiative to provide for and care for widows, orphans, and if my interpretation is correct, strangers or aliens. And it's interesting, throughout the Old Testament, we find that God's people have been instructed to provide attention and care, to provide for the widows, orphans, and strangers. It's just a godly trait. And part of Job's self-defense, part of his testimony is, I was that kind of a guy. I was that kind of a man. And people in the community knew it. And that's part of why they respected me. Why was it that God could say that Job was a man blameless and upright? Well, it was because he said no to evil, and because he intentionally pursued righteous acts and care for needy people, and probably many other things. One of the themes of Shepherd's Ministries, of course, is to provide for needy people. If you stop and think about the role, the lot of developmentally disabled people, they're dependent people. Wonderful people, but dependent people. And they deserve our intentional care and provision. And that's what Shepherds is all about. And it's also part of what we invite you to participate in as you pray for us, as some of you even support us. And for that, we are very thankful. But I think it's thought-provoking, isn't it? to think about our relationship with dependent people around us? It's pretty easy to just see it and turn away. Sometimes it's tough to take initiative and to render help to a widow, to an orphan, to an alien, a stranger, or perhaps to a disabled person. Let me encourage you to think about it. Pastor Randy, I'll turn it over to you.
Probably the best known verse in the Bible says, "For God so loved the world that he gave." It goes on and says more than that, but I think there's a lesson